Hi and welcome. I'm Shannon Gibson and I'm the Dean of the David B. O'Malley College of Business, and I'm excited to have all of you joining us for today's panel, Wings of Opportunity, Exploring the Dynamic World of Airline Careers. This panel wouldn't be happening if it were not for the support of the deans of all the colleges at Embry-Riddle. We have Dean Jim Gregory in the audience from engineering. I don't see Peter Hoffman from Arts and Sciences, and then Dean Alan Stolzer. But the people who are on this panel represent alumni from all of our colleges. And the idea was to share with you the myriad opportunities that exist if you'd like to work in an airline that you might not be aware with. I'm going to do a quick introduction of the guest, and then I'm going to hand off from there. So to my right, I have Vanessa Meeksa, Human Factors Engineer, Future Flight Deck Boeing. Next, I have Ian McMurtry, Senior Fleet Analyst, Sun Country. Bill Moore, President, UPS Airlines. Hervé Lavenant, Managing Director, Logistics Services, United Airlines. Steve Becker, Senior Sales Executive, Delta Tech Ops. And John Benderadis, Chief Operating Officer, Spirit Airlines. And leading our panel today will be a student, Magda Myslinski, a junior aeronautical science student who also is pursuing a business minor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shannon. I would just like to start by asking if you would all share a few quick notes about what you do within your role. Vanessa, if you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, hi everybody. So like it was mentioned, I am the Human Factors Engineer at Boeing. I do work for the Future Flight Deck Group in product development. So yeah, I spend all my day kind of doing a lot of human factors research on the new, the new products that we have for the next generation flight deck. So yeah.
And I'm Ian McMurtry, Senior Fleet Analyst, Sun Country Airlines. So I handle our capital leases, working with lessors with regards to month-to-month utilization reporting, and then as well as aircraft acquisition, teardown, end-of-lease transitions, and any sort of engine component, APU, landing gear as well.
So good afternoon, I'm Bill Moore. I'm the president of UPS Airlines. I have global responsibility for all aspects of day-to-day operations, including flight operations, aircraft maintenance, dispatch, anything that it takes to run the airline I have responsibility for. And this is my 32nd year with UPS.
And good afternoon, my name is Hervé Lavenant. I am Managing Director for Logistics Services at United. I'm in charge in this role of all worldwide internal logistics. That is parts, tools, cabin items for passengers, anything that is customer facing and internal. Also safety compliance, AOG, aircraft on ground, tooling, and a few other wonderful things. Lead a team of roughly 1,800 people that do magic around the world for United and its customers.
Magic, I like that, magic. Steve Becker, Delta Tech Ops, technical division of Delta Airlines, part of the team that's responsible for all third-party maintenance work that comes into Delta, be that airframe, engine, components, landing gear, flight controls, that comes into Delta that is not Delta metal. So those of you that fly into Atlanta, I'm sure there's just one or two in the room. When you see those big hangars there and the cool sign that says Fly Delta Jets, which has been there for quite some time, that's my office and that's where I work, but only 50% of the work that goes through that building is Delta metal and the rest are third-party customers, and that's the organization that I'm part of.
Good afternoon, everybody. John Benderadis, Spirit Airlines Chief Operating Officer. Been with the company about 11.5 years. Had the same role at Frontier Airlines. I'm responsible for all the operations, safety, and supply chain.
Thank you. I'll start off with my first question. But many people think of pilots, flight attendants, or gate agents when they think of airline jobs. But what are some of the most rewarding behind-the-scenes roles that our students might be interested in pursuing? John, if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of great jobs in the airline business. I always like to say, no matter what your passion is, we have a role beyond flying the airplane, care of the airplane. If you're interested in marketing, we have that. If you like communication, we have that. If HR, we have that. You know, if IT, certainly have plenty of that. And within those divisions, there's opportunities for advancement. If you want to be a leader of people, there's those opportunities. I mean, my own career took me from a path of mechanic to chief operating officer. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of niche roles within the airline. So performance engineering, you know, dispatch program in Embry-Riddle, you know, those are some of the jobs that people don't always think of first. But certainly with the education that you're getting at one of the best schools in the country, there's a lot more you can do than just what's in front of you.
Thank you, John. Steve, if you have anything else to add on?
Sure, and it's a very good question. Early in my career, when I graduated from Embry-Riddle, I worked for a startup airline called Presidential. And most people here will be too young to remember that, but they actually flew to Daytona Beach. So I came out and started there, and that's where I started. I had no experience whatsoever, and I learned from the ground up how an airline worked. Might not have been the best way, but it was the way that I learned. And I got to do everything that you probably could do at an airline where you didn't need a license. And that was my foray into an industry that became, frankly, a drug for me. It was phenomenally entertaining, and it was great, and it was hard work. Span that gap to where I am now at Delta, at the behemoth of Delta Airlines, where 100,000 people make that big machine turn. It is pilots, it is flights. Everybody has a role at the airline, and every one of those people has a very important job, every single person. But not until I got to Delta did I understand the myriad of other jobs that were truly at this massive airline. And John already mentioned, you know, performance engineering, propulsion engineering, and the list goes on and on and on. People behind the scenes that make that operation as efficient and as safe as it is. So I would say that, although I've been in the industry 38 years, you can never stop learning. And though I've had a varied career, the reality is the past 9 years at Delta have even taught me more. And to appreciate when you see an aircraft take off, how many people stand behind that. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I graduated from here with my Bachelor's of Science in Aerospace Engineering, so I'm a little bit biased towards engineering. Of my 32 years at UPS, I would say 25 of that have been in maintenance and engineering. So certainly I think there's a lot of rewarding jobs in the maintenance and engineering side of the house, just, you know, even outside of flight ops. I would also encourage you, and Dean Gregory and I were talking about this earlier, to think about, if you're an engineer, think about getting your practical and your A&P license while you're here, if there's a way to do that. When I was here, that's certainly something that wasn't spoken about or talked about, but I learned after I started at UPS as an engineer in the hangar how valuable that would have been to me to have that A&P experience. Not very many aircraft engineers in industry have their A&P license, and it is a differentiator in terms of people that I'm looking to hire, or frankly, those that can be even more successful, in my opinion. So I would encourage you to think about that now. It doesn't get any easier when you get older. It took me a lot of time, 3 years, nights and weekends, working on small general aviation airplanes, just building up the hours for the ability to go test. And I'm telling you, that test was as hard as some of my engineering classes while I was here. So it's not a given. I would encourage you to think about it, because I think it opens up a lot of doors. I'm confident I would not be in this chair that I sit in today had it not been that I took the risk and the chance to get my A&P license and broaden my experience.
I'll take it in a different direction. I'm also an Embry-Riddle graduate, got my MBA in 2005 and got hired by Continental. I've now been with United 19 years, and I don't know how to keep a job. I don't know how to keep a job, and I've been now in 6 different divisions, 12 different jobs at United, and each time the company has entrusted me with a larger team, but most importantly, a very different domain. A domain where I didn't know anything, but where curiosity pays off, where your ability to question all the time what goes on matters. And then if you pair this with your education, which provides you an analytical skill set oftentimes, then you're actually capable of delivering something. And so by training, I'm an engineer. Yes, I got an MBA at Embry-Riddle, but I also have an undergrad and grad in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Guess what? I've never used my degree. But I've used the analytical skill set that those disciplines taught me. And I leverage this every day to question everything. And so you don't need to stay in tech ops or in engineering. You can make a career. I started in commercial. I studied in network planning. I studied specifically in flight profitability systems at Continental, looking where the airline was making and losing money. And then I moved over to operations planning, crew scheduling, crew resources, financial planning and analysis, and now tech ops. And I've been in 4 different divisions as a managing director, which shows that your skill set is very transferable across the space at the airline, especially if you come out with an Embry-Riddle degree.
Thank you. Vanessa, Ian, if either of you have anything else to add on, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I'll add a little on. So in terms of positions, I think that the SOC room tends to be a sort of quick fire chamber that is an overall statement to the industry as a whole. The ability to react very quickly to AOG situations, to passenger issues, delayed aircraft. I've been able to see it, take it in, and even as an airline as small as Sun Country, losing one aircraft is losing a large portion of an opportunity for the day. Being able to recover from something like that is a monumental challenge that seems to be overcome with a quick meeting, and it seems like the flight goes on with no issue whatsoever with a different tail registration, and next thing you know, you wake up and that aircraft that was down 12 hours ago is ready to go once again, courtesy of that tech ops team. And I think that quick response flows upwards towards the top. Even though I'm in a finance position, what you predict will happen 12 months from now, long-range plan 3 years from now, very rarely ever comes to fruition. You're ready to adapt on a moment's notice, and having that sort of adaptability in the industry, I think, is reflective of every position that you'll find in an airline.
Vanessa?
Yeah, I actually just graduated from Riddle about a year ago with my master's in human factors. Before that, I was in medical school, so I do have a year of doctorate degree from one of the medical schools here, and I switched careers. So I was in my 30s, 2020, COVID. I'm here in the best flight school in Daytona Beach, right? Like, I'm starting flying. So I really am a pilot, not really a human factors engineer, so to say, but I did want to get a degree because I came from a doctor's degree back to a bachelor, and I was like, well, I can definitely use my kind of like health knowledge, psychology knowledge that I have from medical school, psychiatry knowledge, and incorporate that with aviation. So that's where I found human factors. So I was able to actually get my degree, get my master's. While I was doing all this, I went to a conference, Women Aviation Conference. I randomly met some Boeing engineers there, and I got an internship right away after like 2 months. So ever since then, I've been at Boeing. It's been about 3 years now. I did a little bit of an internship. I got my full-time job. I do work from home now, but what it is that they gave me an opportunity to still be a pilot. They assisted me with all my flight training, with my CFI, CWI, MEI, multi-add-on. They pay for all that. But I need that whole experience to be kind of the best human factors personnel that I can actually be, because being the human factors and building a new flight deck, if you don't understand how the pilot interacts, it's just not going to work. You know, the general engineer, they're not going to know what it means to like switch radio frequencies. They're going to think, well, if you put 125, do you still need to put 0.35? they won't know instead of knowing that, hey, the whole time it's there. Like, there's stuff there that just general engineers won't know, but having both of these perspectives, as a pilot, as a human factor engineer, definitely I can see like building something better, something bigger, and not wasting time on like little questions that are probably irrelevant, you know, so yeah.
Thank you. Moving on, my next question. In the evolving world of aviation, how do you see emerging technologies such as AI, automation, transforming your company in the next 5 to 10 years? Also, how are you preparing for those changes? John, if you'd like to start us off again, you may.
Sure. I mean, you know, automation is in every part of the business that we have. Not a crew member on the ground with an iPad in their hand these days. That's kind of the simplest form. It's adopted, you know, things like self-bag drop, and we're working now for single-point biometrics, whereby we don't even have to check somebody's driver's license, right? You can just walk up to the team, facial recognition, drop your bag, and be on your way. I think that's kind of the very beginning of what's possible. The next 5 to 10 years are going to be very exciting in this space. Honestly, given the challenges of an airline and the required investments, we're probably not as far along as some of our competitors, but certainly in the world of IT and how we interact with our guests, there's a ton of opportunity there.
Thank you. Steve?
We can talk about this for a couple of days, probably. But the reality is Delta prides itself on trying to be at least at the forefront of technology innovation, and that innovation transcends itself into the flying passenger. If you've flown on Delta in the past year, you've seen it yourself. The backseat video, the interaction, the interface, the Bluetooth interface to your own phone, those kinds of things. This is something that we try to stay at the forefront. It comes at a cost. It comes at added investment. At the end of the day, we're trying to differentiate ourselves from our competition by doing that. It comes at a cost, it comes at an investment, but we also believe that it has a benefit. We're going to get a return on that investment. And that return on investment comes in the form of loyalty, in terms of people continuing to fly us. That's not the end-all, be-all, but it is important to us. On the maintenance side, I mean, John alluded to a few things there. There are a number of things in the maintenance world which are continually evolving. I mean, AI is going to be an integral component of what happens next. Staying at pace or even ahead as much as possible is critically important, because as systems change, you need to change with them. And so Bill mentioned earlier about the number of why it's so important to have aircraft mechanics, AMTs, aircraft maintenance technicians, as they come on board now. The younger ones, they have this expertise, they have this learning. What happens here at Embry-Riddle, what you're learning in this institution, is going to have a direct impact on what happens to the next technology phase of airlines. Everybody's sitting here in some capacity. So being at the forefront of that is very important. But we are, as much as I'd like to say, yeah, we are at the forefront, we are also lagging in a couple of areas, but we're trying to keep up to date as fast as we can. But the world is an ever-evolving entity, and the airlines are actually something that's seen by everyone. So as a result of that, game on.
So United is, I think, also at the forefront, like Delta. In fact, if we go and compare the Delta app to United app, right away you'll see the one that uses AI today, and that would be United. When you have a delay, or when you have weather, or when you have any circumstances around your flight, we'll proactively message you in the app via AI to tell you what's going on with your flight. We used to have human beings writing the story. When we launched the feature, it's called Every Flight Has a Story. We launched this about 3-4 years ago, and we've now replaced the human being with AI this past year. to be able to simply be more effective at how it is we do the work. And so it doesn't mean that we are shedding jobs doing this. What we do is that we help people focus on what really matters and free up bandwidth. We've also launched United GPT last year, which is the internal ChatGPT to United. So we have a version of ChatGPT which is privatized for United, so that when we upload United data, it doesn't go into a different ecosystem. It remains within the private ecosystem, very legally important, of United Airlines, but yet enables you to leverage all the power of ChatGPT. And so it's already there. So the advice I would get for all the students is get on that same page. Already use ChatGPT not just to write your essays, your professors wouldn't like it, but to actually be creative in how it is you can become more efficient in your day-to-day work in order to enable yourself to be there once you enter into the workforce. Because trust me, if you don't do it, the competing person against you will have done it, and probably will get that job you won't get because you're not up to snuff as it relates to technology. And so technology is here to make us more efficient. AI is just one more version of technology, but it is one that is changing the way we do business on a day-to-day basis. And so it's something very important for you as students to just get adapted to.
Maybe a little bit of different spin on automation at UPS. Being the world's largest package delivery, transportation, and logistics company, automation is at our core. We have to have automation in order for us to do what we do as successful as we do. In Louisville, Kentucky, where our airline headquarters is, we're able to process 416,000 packages every hour. And so our entire operation lasts about 3.5 hours every night. So if you shipped your package from LA to New York, it would land in Louisville, be on the ground for an hour and a half, and be on its way to New York. The only way we can make that happen is with automation. So we're really leaning into automation heavily, not just in Worldport in Louisville, but across the country, because frankly, manpower is becoming more and more of a challenge, and less people want to sort packages for what the wage rate requires. So we're on a vast campaign of automating a number of what we call conventional hubs throughout the US, where we're integrating that technology to allow us to be more successful. I would say for AI, we're doing it a little bit differently in thinking about our customer call centers. So if you call in and want to know where your package is, our rate of success using an actual person was not as high as we would like for it to be, and nor would you like for it to be. I see some of you shaking your head. You must have got a hold of 1-800-PICK-UPS and not been happy. But hopefully through automation, and we've done a number of tests to find that it increases our success rate of finding your package and giving you a successful outcome by tenfold, just using AI technology, and we're partnering with IBM to make that happen. So really exciting times and a lot of investment at UPS in those two areas.
So you'll find the Sun Country is not as far along as the three gentlemen in the center here. But it's actually a really interesting period for Sun Country in terms of the evolution of AI and overall automated processes. Since the fleet has grown so much, a lot of the older systems are currently under review, very much taking a key interest in the way that the airline is being run, because the way it could have been run at 25 aircraft is not the way we're necessarily going to run the airline at 100 aircraft. And as we keep inching upwards with more Amazon aircraft and more passenger aircraft coming through the door, that pressure to find an automated process that makes the analyst less reliable on looking at historical data and empowered to look at future forecasts, to build a future-looking spread is definitely the direction the airline wants to be headed towards. And then once we identify those systems and commit that this is the pathway forward, having them integrated to the point where they're able to talk to each other, that we can share data amongst our clients and customers is going to be a big step forward for Sun Country.
Yeah, so I'm looking at AI from the future flight deck standpoint. So there's a lot going on. You know, where do you start with AI in the flight deck, right? There's like single pilot operations already going on. There are unmanned vehicle. You know, something needs to kind of propel that whole thing. And a lot of times, you know, AI is is in there already. So if you're not using ChatGPT, which I hope everybody else here is using ChatGPT, everybody has a Boeing. We do have our own little ChatGPT, so most of the time, yeah, I use it to my advantage. I'm not sitting there writing papers and papers. I use that AI to help me write. But at the end of the day, I do need myself as an expert in human factors to actually verify that whole thing, because it will give you wrong answers. Like, especially in a very specific field, it will do that. Like, if I use something as specific as writing a requirement and I ask it, hey, do you know system-theoretic process analysis, which is a new way of writing requirements that integrates human factors, it won't know how to do that. Like, it's just so complicated that none of them are going to know how to do it. So you do need to know what you're studying and what you're going to learn, in your career. But yeah, Boeing AI or ChatGPT will help you kind of not waste too much time on that. That being said, flight deck, is it going to have some AI person? Maybe, right? You already have ForeFlight in your flight deck now that can do everything. It can. Right, the flight instructors, they don't even need to sign it. I don't even sign my students' paperwork anymore. It's on the app. So I go there without any paper. So I'm also a flight instructor, by the way, in Orlando. So a lot of my students, they don't even have paper. They only have apps. I sign my paperwork there. I give them an endorsement online. Everything is online. So it's all with the use of an AI that I can do all that, right? I can even ask ChatGPT, write me an endorsement for, this and this requirement, and it will do it. So yeah, I hope you guys are all like on top of this ChatGPT AI thing as well.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah.
My next question is for students from Embry-Riddle are graduating with a wide variety of technical skills. With that being said, what specific interpersonal skill sets are you looking for in candidates that set them up for success in your companies?
I'll take a stab at that, because we talked about it today at length, so it's on my frontal lobe. The communication skill set that you will have when you graduate, I cannot emphasize how important it is. That communication skill set, it's verbal, it's nonverbal, it's written, it's everything. It's how you carry yourself. It's the old saying, the first impression is the longest lasting one. That's very important as well. But at the end of the day, I think you need to, there was the young alumni panel yesterday was very telling, because the question was asked, if you had to go back and do something differently, what would you do? And communication came out of that. It was saying to be able to communicate better, be able to communicate more efficiently. For those of you individuals sitting here, you know that you're a little bit shyer than others. Work on that so that you have confidence in yourself that you can come across, and that's for an interview or anything else. But the ability to articulately convey and communicate with individuals on a professional level will separate you from somebody else who gets the job. You could be the more qualified person, but that could easily be what separates you from getting the job. And that includes being comfortable having conversations with people of a senior level at a company. Some people are just not comfortable with talking to people that they haven't met before. Work on that. Work on that communication skills. You know yourself better than anybody. If you think you need to work on something, written skills, and I don't mean just writing on a computer, I mean like actually writing. The ability to communicate back and forth is absolutely critical. And I will tell you, more often than not, if I'm on a panel to interview a new graduate from any university, I will tell you that communication will be one of the first things we look at to see if they even go to the next level. So that tells you right there how important it really is. So public speaking classes, those kinds of things, work on that. Be proactive. Put yourself out there outside the envelope. I know it's uncomfortable sometimes. I get it. The quicker you adapt to that and embrace that, the world's your oyster.
I'd add on to that, to be present. If you are physically present but intellectually absent, it will be obvious right away. you'll be disengaged, you won't have the passion, the fire in the belly, but most importantly, you won't be able to connect the dots to actually produce what actually matters. And so that ability to be present and thus engage with people and ask questions is critically important to ensure that you're able to actually produce the work that is expected of you on time. And that is one of the qualities that, in my eyes, matters the second most after communication. Communication has been my number one by far. You're exactly right, Steve. But being present for me certainly is my number two.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about communication. You can be the smartest engineer in the room, but if you can't articulate it, nobody really cares. I mean, I've hired C students over A students just because they had a better presence, like you said, make solid eye contact, they're likable, they smile, and can communicate confidence. And that just doesn't come naturally to a lot of engineers, but it's something you have to work on because it's not only about getting your first job, it's about getting every job thereafter.
I agree with everybody so far. I'll add on as well to be flexible. I know I've seen it through what's come through the door at Sun Country is those who tend to be more acceptable that when somebody pulls you into the office and says, I know your role is to work on A, but I need you to work on B. Those that tend to say yes, sir, and get it done, regardless of the fact that you might not fully know the story and you need to learn more to build a competent project. Tend to stay around a lot longer than those who are very rigid and very unwilling to follow any leadership either at their own level or well into the executive branch.
Yeah, and just to add to that, also teamwork. I mean, you can be the best engineer, but if you don't work well with the other 5, it's really not going to work out. Like, and not communicating well, also, like, that can really cause a problem. Also, understanding other people's viewpoints. Like, yeah, I'm human factors and pilot, but then there's a systems engineer that just doesn't understand flying. They're just a systems engineer, but I have to respect their point of view. And I might not understand it sometimes. I just have to back down in the conversation, be like, okay, I'll accept what you're saying. But it takes so much strength and learning to just kind of like, okay, I'll take a step back and I'll think about this and then come back. Because otherwise, like building a product or doing something greater in a company, it just doesn't work if you don't have, great communication skills, but also teamwork, being flexible as well. I get asked to do stuff that are not exactly human factors, like lead a project. Not too interested in that. I'm a pilot. I'm not really a manager. But I have to do it, and then I have to communicate with other people that might not want to do on a daily basis or do a schedule. But I have to be flexible. And as a newer engineer, like I kind of take what I can, right? I do have a saying, even as a new engineer, like what I want to do. Like just for example, I don't want to work ergonomics. And my manager, I do communicate that to them, and they don't give me ergonomics jobs. So it's important to really know what you want to do, not just like, oh, I'm just there. But yeah, like show that security, that confidence in you, like I know what I'm really good at and that's what I really want to do. But be flexible, yeah.
Thank you. John, if you had anything to add?
Well, that's a pretty good overall, and they hit all the high points for sure. What we hire as well. Important, but it's all the things you can said. It's communication, working as a team player. We've already said, right? Everyone doesn't move without the actions of hundreds and thousands of people working together. So if you're not a team player, that's work. I would say curiosity, the passion. I agree with my colleague. You don't have to do things. If you're somebody who's supposed to work remote and you only want to work 9 to 5, you probably don't want to be an airline operator. And know your field a little bit. I think we can some of the other skills, but if you don't have raw energy is important. It's going to be hard to get a job.
Thank you. And then as your company's leaders, what specific challenges do you face within your role? And how do you navigate these obstacles to drive success in your company? If anyone wants to start us off.
I'll go ahead and jump in first if you don't mind. So being still in the analyst level, not exactly up into the upper realm of leadership, I think the hardest thing to do is turn operational difficulties into leadership one-pagers, essentially. A lot of the way that Sun Country operates is on the field. Our headquarters is the airport hangar right next to the maintenance hangar. So it's very easy for headquarters to get drawn into operational difficulties. And with that comes the analyst's job of taking a very complicated situation, airworthiness directive, a operational difficulty with regards to baggage handling, condensing it to the point where an executive leader can look at it in 5 minutes and understand the entire story. It's something that they don't want to spend an incredibly large amount of time on unless they think that it's something super important, but it's something they need to be made aware of. And that's definitely something that's a difficult aspect of the job.
Thank you.
I'm happy to chime in. A little bit different on my end. Maybe 11, 12 years ago, when I was in our high potential program, which we call LEAD, or used to call LEAD at United, Jeff Smizek, who was then our CEO, had stopped by and had a conversation with us. And it was a very candid conversation, unscripted, around lessons in leadership. And there's something that I did not understand at the time that now resonates with me that he had then mentioned. And it was that at times it could become lonely. And I've always wondered what he meant by becoming lonely. And what it meant was as follows. As you grow in rank, you have less and less people that do the same job function than yours. And so in my role today, I'm the head of logistics. So people will rely on me to answer all logistics questions. There is no peer that I can rely upon when I need advice as it relates to logistics. And so you have to develop your coping mechanism so that this loneliness be not a factor to your performance. And so you develop that obviously with your peers that don't do the same roles within the corporations. I know a ton of managing directors at United Airlines. I know a ton of officers at United, but they don't do the same functions than I do. And so while everybody looks at me as it relates to the domain of expertise it is I do, I am not lonely in the role. Of course, once you become the CEO, your peers are the CEOs of the airlines. And so what it means is that you have to develop that network of trusted advisors within the company and outside the company so that you never have this feeling of solitude, of loneliness within the role, because no matter what, you actually are never alone. But you could get to a loneliness symptom in case you don't build that network.
Thank you.
Maybe the most obvious one for me would be managing the macroeconomic environment now, certainly with all of the challenging changes going on with tariffs, and it's probably changed since this morning. But I would say maybe more related to this would be talent development and identifying top talent. Because I think if you're able to do that, some of the other challenges of running a day-to-day airline become a little bit more easier. So I spend a significant amount of time developing talent and identifying who's the next future leader. So maybe a couple of pieces of advice on how to work through that is always be willing to raise your hand and take risks. Be willing to step outside of your comfort zone, even though it may not be something that you're interested in. You might say, I'm an engineer. I know you're an engineer, but there may be only a limited number of positions for senior leadership in engineering. If you really have a goal about advancing your career, you may need to go lateral before you can go vertical. So just be willing to take risk and take on more responsibility so that when I'm identifying top talent or looking for people who may be future leaders, you have more on your resume to do that. I would say I wouldn't be here today had I not left engineering and went into aircraft maintenance and went a different path to make it to this chair. So just a couple of things to consider.
Bill, to rebound on what you've said, it is so important. I cannot emphasize more what Bill just said. I have always volunteered to do extra, beyond my scope. And that also meant that now in my 12th role, I have only interviewed for 1 out of 12 roles I've been in, and the only role I've interviewed for was my very first role. Every single other role, every single time I've been tapped on the shoulder, and oftentimes it's been, please go fix this. And that is because I've raised my hand many times.
Just a few quick comments, both on what Bill said and what Hervé said as well. What's interesting to note is there's 100,000 people at Delta. There's 17,000 pilots. There's 13,000 people in Delta Tech Ops. The rest, gate agents, flight attendants, ramp agents, and the people in the offices that make the airline run. Delta has changed over the course of the past 6-7 years. During COVID, we lost 77,000 years of experience overnight, early retirements, early out packages. We have since backfilled those people. At the end of the day, the dynamic has changed. We now have a younger generation running one of the largest airlines in the world. And so I would say, taking a couple of threads that some of my panelists have said, be present, be curious, ask questions, pay attention, and read the aviation press. Watch what's happening, the dynamics of the industry, because it may or may not help you steer where you go. And Bill said it a couple times. You know, there are opportunities there, but you may need to shift left or right. You know, we've mentioned flexibility. Pay attention to what's going on. When I joined Delta 9 years ago, I was employee number 0. I was the bottom of the heap. I am now at the 50th percentile. Think about that. 9 years I went from 0 to 50,000. That's how much Delta has changed. People sitting in this room here, in these chairs now, you're the next generation. You're the next generation that's going to carry our industry forward. Do so, be present, and one of my favorite Latin sayings, I can't remember, was fortune favors the bold. Remember that, fortune favors the bold. Put yourself in an opportunity to learn. Put yourself in an opportunity to have an opportunity. It's not just luck, it's what you make it. Be in a position to have luck. Be aggressive and be forthright as you do that. So as we look at what's happening in the industry today and figuring out where you want to be in that opportunity, be curious. Do your homework, read, and as Hervé said a couple times, be present, be active. Show us you want to get hired and you'll get hired.
John, I see you turned your microphone on.
No, I say the same thing I say differently. The fun is at the deep end. No fun being in the water. You're too comfortable when you down. Actually, seems like I'm forever drop the action. Business is full of action, and some that at the end is complicated to the labor board of directors, somebody who's not in operations. It's really critical. Otherwise, you get a lot of folks that want to just, show how much they know at the table and turn everybody else off. I have to remind my flight officer, CPDL, texting from controllers, and then everybody understand. And I also have a habit of mandating anybody uses, on a large scale, they have to see what we rest of it. But that's what everybody really, really.
Thank you. And Vanessa, if you had any last thoughts?
Yeah, just to kind of sum it up, just really be passionate about it. If you're passionate, whoever's going to hire you, they will see it. Like, I love Boeing, so when I did my interview, it was just obvious that I really love it. I love it for different reasons, right? I really don't like to stick on the Airbus, even though I fly Diamonds day and night now. So I did tell them that, hey, I do like the yoke better. I think it's better in different ways, or whatever I said on my interview. But that was really me thinking about the Boeing airplanes, right? Without me even knowing that I'm going to get hired in the future flight deck. Like, I didn't even know. I just was like, oh, human factors or something like that. But yeah, be passionate. They will see that. Anybody who's going to hire you, they'll see that you love airplanes, right? You can talk about, know everything in the news, know what's happening. You know, so many things are happening in aviation today that you should be well aware of it. And you can even mention something like that in your interview so they know that, hey, you know, I'm on top of my game. I know aviation, right? Or for me, at my interview, I did mention stuff that bothered me in the Cessna airplane. Like, I'm a flight instructor, and if I have to turn on the Cessna airplane, I literally have to reach over somebody else. Maybe for me it's fine, but for a male to reach over a female, we've done some research, it was a little bit uncomfortable, right? Just general stuff like that that I experienced in my day-to-day flight training here, I did mention that. But that spoke to me thinking about human factors even before I was human factors. So just be, you know, love what you do, be passionate about it, and it will be seen for sure.
Thank you. And my final question for you all is, what advice would you offer to students who may not be following a typical career path of our graduates, particularly when it comes to starting out in the aviation industry and building that fulfilling career that they're searching for? Additionally, how important is networking in that process? John, if you wanted to start.
Sure. I mean, I follow your passion. The networking is important. But from my experience, we've already talked about it. It was raising your hand and being willing to take on an opportunity or a challenge that somebody else may want. I mean, a very person with some positive stuff that you want. Literally, life. That's how I got it. And then, you know, just be ready to learn and you know, take on new things. You guys are the future, you know, like the best ideas don't come from the C-suite. The best ideas that we have come from the people that are doing the work and that are out in the field doing the job and bringing their new learnings to our environment. And I'm excited for all of you and what your future holds. Business continues to evolve, and I think there's no better business in the world. I don't know what else we would do. For my college, this business gets you.
Thank you, John. Steve, if you wanted to.
Sure, a couple comments there. About the network. 30-second story. 2 years ago I came, I spoke in front of a class of students and was talking about the network, and I had a student raise their hand in the back and say, where do you go to get that? Is that a website, or how do I do that? And then I realized they really didn't know. The network is virtual to you. It's what you make it. Is it important? Especially as you progress in your career? It is. Where does the network start? Right now. It's already started. Use that to your benefit. And as time passes, you'll realize, if you ask any one of us on the panel, does your network mean something? We'll say, absolutely. When you're just graduating, you're just starting. Don't underestimate the power of that. Truly, it really is something to just remember that as you do that, I also want to mention something that I mentioned in sales classes, is your ethical DNA. Your ethical DNA, and that's a term that I used, and say, as you enter the business world, you represent yourself, you represent this institution of higher learning that you will leave with a degree in your hand, and you will represent the company whose name is on the hat that you enter a room with. Remember, that ethical DNA belongs to you, and it represents everything you do from this point forward, and that's a changeable thing. Make sure that as you leave this institution of higher learning, you keep that in mind, and you keep that at the highest level possible.
So I think, like we've mentioned a little bit earlier, raise your hand. Do that extra homework for scope. And I don't mean the homework as in terms of student, but at work. Do that extra piece of work that's not in your scope, but that expands your scope and will help you get incremental learnings, knowledge that then you can leverage towards your next role/goal. But as it relates directly to networking, Steve is right. 25 years down the road, the person next to you seated will be the executive on the other side of the table from you. And if you do not get to know that person today, if you do not build the basis of a relationship today, down the road, 25 years, it'll just be just one more transaction. Or sometimes actually it won't be a transaction because you won't have that skill to actually build that bridge across the table. And that is something that is extremely important to the business environment today. I always like to remind my younger employees that picking up the phone when you can convey emotions over shooting lol in a text message will carry you much further in your career, because you have a different way of feeling the intonation and the wording that's being used versus a text message. So of course there is a place for text message or for short emails, but generally speaking, people want that relationship when they engage with you in a meaningful fashion.
I would go back to flexibility and just think about a company or companies that you want to work for, and being open to maybe a non-traditional way to get your foot in the door. So for example, I interned at UPS when I was a senior here at Embry-Riddle. And when I graduated, UPS wasn't hiring. It was a really bad time in aviation. And fortunately, I was able to get a job working for a small engineering firm. Well, 5 months later, UPS called and said, "Bill, would you like to come back to work for UPS?" And I said, "Sure." And they said, "But it's in flight publications. You're going to be an editor writing manuals." And I said, "But I'm an engineer." And they said, "You want a job or not?" And that's how I got my foot in the door, as I took that entry-level editor position for 2.5 years, which I did not care for, got me in the door, and now 32 years later, I'm sitting in this chair. So think about the non-traditional way to get your foot in the door with a company. Maybe you want to sell airplanes for Boeing one day. Probably you won't enter into sales right out of college at Boeing. You probably will have to think about being an IE analyst on a factory floor learning the production system. Think about a non-traditional way to get to where you are. I promise you, where you start is not where you're going to end.
I agree with that, and I had a similar situation with Sun Country. So I encourage everybody here to begin to build your network, and I believe your network should be able to understand your talents and your work ethic along the way. I was able to utilize that network here while I was at Embry-Riddle and utilize the ISTAC conference that the MSAF program engaged students with to create a bridge with Dave Davis, the CFO of Sun Country, and from there I was essentially accepted a finance position on a basis of I wouldn't know what department I'd be working for. So I came in knowing I already had sort of bought into the flexibility of, okay, I'm not going to be working probably directly where I wanted to be, which would have been in fleet. I would have to take that step along the way and sort of build a bridge inside Sun Country that proves that I deserve to get the position that I felt like I was pursuing after. So I definitely think it's important to network, and I definitely think it's important to be flexible in that regard, because just getting your foot through the door and allowing yourself to open up that avenue inside the company and inside the industry is just it's gonna help grow that pathway a lot quicker.
Well, my dream job is to be a captain at Delta, so here I am networking.
You have your resume.
That was just for me. Congrats for me. I almost got a job today. But yeah, that's my dream job, and that's my ultimate goal. And I'm working at Boeing as a human factors engineer because I want to learn this airplane from a different perspective, write the requirements, know how to build the future airplane, everything. And I'm hoping that this one day will give me like a better competitiveness for the pilot job that I want, right? Like everybody's a pilot, right? But what's going to make you a little bit more, stand out-ish, right? How are you going to stand out? What are you going to talk to? Obviously, if you go to Delta and you tell them, hey, I was a human factors engineer at Boeing, they'll be like, okay, that sounds good, Like, it's not that bad. Maybe we'll take you. They'll consider you as well, right? But think about like something else you can do other than being a pilot, right? You need sometimes that backup. And for me, it was human factors. However, it wasn't obviously a backup because I was very passionate about what I did. And it just happened that I got this role. Not too much luck, but I love what I do. So I was able to actually get into this bigger position and have them, assist me with all my flight training. I come from a single mom, and she's the only one that was my support, so I needed a way to actually get all my flight training done, to get my hours. So I'm almost there, 700 hours. I'm almost ready to apply. But again, like I tried to do both of these roles at the same time. So right now I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at Boeing, and other times that they need. And then in the afternoons, in the evening, Saturday, Sunday, I flight instruct. So I'm really like trying to, quote unquote, grind to get to the airlines. So sometimes you need to do two things at the same time, right? So not easy, but try to make it get it going,
Thank you, Vanessa. And just to end, I'd like to open the floor up for a quick Q&A. I believe our tech team will be floating around with some microphones.
Hello, everybody on the panel. First, it was very nice hearing from all of you. I had a just general question for everyone. As someone soon to be graduating, the future is very open, and often that can be a very frightening thing for people. How would you recommend you find your place, find what suits you best?
Know yourself. Know yourself. Know what makes you tick. And from there, everything will just build itself on. And so when I meet with every single new hire I get on my team, one-on-one, and one of my 4 questions is, tell me what your dream is. Not your dream job, your dream, right? And then let's build a plan to realize that dream together. And it will take work on your end to get there, but you got to know at least what that dream is, and then it's up to you to build that career to reach that goal. And it can be anything. And so it's actually not frightening. In fact, I think I read somewhere the future is bright, and that's true. The future is bright, and it's all in your hands.
I would say do some investigation in research into culture and making sure that you're a good fit for that company and making sure that company is a good fit for you. We have a saying at UPS, not all cars stop at UPS. Not everybody fits into our culture. That's okay. That's why people have choice to work at other places. But I think it's really paramount for you to be happy to really like and align with the culture of the company you're working for, and I think you'll have a more enjoyable experience if you know about that.
I second that. I was going to mention culture. Bill beat me to it. I want to say this also. There's culture, and then there's size of company. There's some pretty big companies represented up here, right? I wouldn't take away a minute that I had with that little startup carrier 35 years ago. Not a minute. I learned more in those 3.5 years than you can put in 15 or 20. It changed me as a person in a positive way. So I would say absolutely, as Bill said, culture is a big deal. One of the things I did before I went to Delta was I worked for Pratt & Whitney for 18 years and sold jet engines around the world to airlines all over the world. And I will tell you, culture, mindset, philosophy, sit in a meeting and have the same conversation with somebody from a different part of the world, how they think, why they think what they do, it was fascinating. And so I would say, good for you. You picked an amazing industry. Well done. I would say, do your homework. And homework is work as hard as looking for a job as you will work in the job. And that in terms, as Bill said, research, investigation. You had the benefit of the internet. I'm showing my age here. Internet didn't exist. A real cool thing called the library. we used to have to go to. You have an amazing tool in the internet at your fingertips. Use it. And I think what you'll find is there are companies all over the industry that are super cool companies. You might not go to work for Delta first. You might not go to work for UPS first or United. It may be a company this size. It may be a supplier to one of those companies. And what you may find yourself is a bigger wheel at a small supplier, all of a sudden, you have quite a bit of responsibility. You go to work for a bigger company, chances are you're going to have smaller responsibility with an opportunity to grow. But that, working for potentially a smaller company with greater responsibility, you may grow faster. Submit a resume and then come to work for Bill.
Thank you very much.
Hi. So I know you guys talked a lot about like emerging technologies and how it's really beneficial to all of your companies, but how do you balance like efficiency versus complacency with the new technologies within your employees?
For me, it starts with training, making sure that we can spend all the money we want on deploying world-class technologies, but if we don't spend the time training employees how to use it, we just wasted all of our money. I just got some recent feedback from some of my employees recently about some cool hub automation that we put out. I was talking about it earlier. And they said, this is great, but we don't know how to use it. And the only piece that we do know how to use is 10%. So it's like we kind of wasted the money there. So you got to make sure that you, in my opinion, spend the time on making sure people know how to properly use it so that they can be most efficient.
I'll echo that somewhat. I'll take it maybe ever so slightly different. If you go back to the reason why you invest in technology, if you go back into why we create systems, systems are here to handle complex problems on behalf of human beings. And so at the end of the day, it's got to make the work easy. If you create a system and that the system adds complexity, you failed as the leader of that project, because that means that your change management and thus the training it is you need to do is going to generate a user backlash at the end of the day, because they have to do more to get something that might be ever so slightly improved in terms of outcomes. And so at the core, and in fact at United we have this concept of core 4, which is safety, dependable, efficient, and caring. And the reason it's those 4 easy words is because we wanted to keep it really simple, and it's the easiest change management you can do. That's the foundation of a culture, right? And culture, which was discussed just before. If it is not simple, it won't be assimilated. The same goes with technology. It has got to be easy on people for people to assimilate it and use it. And once you have usage and adoption, then you just fly and soar. But absent that, it's very hard to do that. And so when you look at efficiencies, at the end of the day, you look at systems, right, generally speaking. But that change management is capital. So keeping it easy and doing the proper change management.
Hello, my name is Alisher. I study aviation management here in College of Business, and I want to thank you for coming here and doing this presentation for us. My question is, what are some key factors that air carriers considers when deciding to launch or discontinue a new route? Thank you.
I can take that on. That was the start of my career, but obviously I still have recollection. I'm going to speak with discontinuation first. If you look at markets, right, every single market in a network is gauged on its profitability. It's not gauged on a route profitability, it's based on its network profitability, which means that we look at the profitability for that route, but also how much it contributes to the overall network. And so it's a little bit more complex than that. And so that means that if you pull that route out of the network, how much less will your network be valued at? And so realistically, it's what we call, it's a little bit more than a P&L, it's really the net contribution. to the network that we look at. From an airline standpoint, I presume that from a cargo standpoint, it's a similar construct, but just a little bit different at the end of the day. Now the question goes into how do you launch a market? And that's obviously a lot more esoteric because it takes into account having the data. But once you've explored all the markets where you have the data, MIDT data to start with, for instance, right? Or traffic data. Once you don't have the data, that's when it becomes a little bit more esoteric. And so let's take, for instance, the new destinations on the United roadmap. We are going to start flying this May into Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and Gnuk, Greenland. We are going to be the first US airline to do both markets. And how do you get there? How do you develop those markets? How do you pick those markets? It's about what is my GDP growth in those markets? Are those economies humming or not? If you have a high GDP growth, you are likely to see economic conditions that are lending themselves to development of trade. And so that is an indication that it might be something that might work well. The second aspect, and that's something we've seen with the rebound on the other side of COVID, is what we call premium tourism. All American tourists have really changed their patterns of travel post-COVID, and has helped us launch some markets that we didn't think were sustainable at United initially. But turns out they were. And so if you look at a lot of the new destinations in Europe that have been launched on our side of the fence, you see some islands, you see some new destinations in Portugal, Italy, and that's been very successful. We've launched last October Morocco, and now we are venturing into more esoteric markets. And so as you go more and more fringe into the market it is you fly into, you'll also notice that the gauge reduces more and more and more and more. And so a new market in Europe, because of the range today, leverages a 7.5, or if it's closer in, you'll pull in a max 8, generally speaking. But you want to bet if the max 7 was a flying thing, or the max something with even thinner capacity, you'd see some thinner markets that would get explored. And so when we look at Ulaanbaatar and Gnuk, one is going to be on a max, and the other one is going to leverage the Micronesia fleet, which will be an 800 airplane. And so very small capacity, because we're testing the water, and we know obviously those markets wouldn't sustain a wide-body airplane.
Thank you.
I'll add a little more to the low-cost carrier Sun Country side of things. So a couple of things we take into consideration as well is our ability to create what we call power patterns with our charter partners, looking at cities and destinations that would align with our casino network, our MLS cities that would turn a low-cost scheduled service flight into a charter flight, back into a scheduled service flight, utilizing one aircraft, one crew to build sort of 2 scheduled service cities. And then on top of that, just looking at the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month side of things. We flow in and out of cities on different days, on different months, at different times of the day. And all of that is built off of the level of expectation that our customers have provided us, based off of both our data, our competitors' data, and then taking that and building a schedule that targets their need and their want. And as their tastes and destinations vary, we'll vary our schedule to make sure that we align with what our customers want.
So I'll take a thread from Ian, and I'll take a thread from Hervé both, because both of what they said is exceptionally valid. Now I'm over that. I'm going to put the concept of co-chair partners. So Delta's part of SkyTeam. So our SkyTeam partners mean a lot to us, and vice versa. And so that balance is important. So we have hub cities, both Delta has hub cities in the United States, and we have hub cities internationally. Well, those hub cities are strategic in nature. So as a result of that, so take, for example, Incheon in Korea. So Korean Airlines is a huge partner of ours. We take that very seriously. So determining Korean takes what routes for, on behalf of Delta Codeshare and vice versa, it's not taken lightly. That's very, very detailed conversations that are part of that. KLM in Amsterdam, which routes KLM takes, where they go. There are sometimes routes that Delta gives up and says, you know what, we're going to give that to you, Air France. We're going to go from Raleigh-Durham to Charles de Gaulle, which was a Delta route for many, many years, and we gave that up to Air France and said, we're okay for you to have that, and they fly it every day. Who would have thought that? But that's a fact. All I'm saying is that the codeshare alliances that are out there, codeshare partners and your alliances are managed very carefully, globally and constantly. And so sometimes there's a change on what the frequency is on a route, what's the gauge, who's going to operate it? Is it going to be LATAM? Is it going to be KLM? Is it going to be Virgin? We decide that with them, we negotiate that with them. So that balance to make sure everybody's happy is important.
Perfect, thank you.
Three. 1, 2, 3.
Hello, I'm Tyler Husar, senior supply chain student. My question is just general to the entire board. When the opportunity to a new position or role comes your way, what are things you are looking for that makes you want to pursue it? And what are some red flags that potentially makes you deter from the position?
I guess I can answer that for you. Since I'm a little bit newer and I have the opportunities to change roles. For me, one thing I look at, what are the requirements? What does it need me to do? Do I need to oversee people? Do I not need to oversee people? Am I going to be like a technical fellow more or something like that? So for me, that was really important. Also important is, where do I need to move, right? Do I need to go to Seattle? Do I need to move to Brazil? What teams I work with as well. Like, I work internationally with Germany, I work with Brazil. So that also matters, right? Because what if you really don't want to work with international parts of Boeing, right? That could be something you might not want, and you want to stick with just Seattle or just Louisville or wherever part of Boeing. So I did look at all that. So for me, and also where you're going, right? I'm in the future flight deck. I care about the best new airplane. I want to develop the best new airplane, the best flight deck, the most technology advanced. I want all that. So it doesn't make sense for me to go and work on 737. It's just not there. That's not the airplane I care about. I would never go if I'm asked to do human factors on that airplane. It's just not something I'm interested in. Or maybe go on the new 777X, potentially, right? You need to know what you like, because if you don't want to go work on a single aisle airplane, you want the big boys, 777X, the whichever it is, 787, know what you want. Just because you got a position, it might not be good for you. You might not be happy in there. So just think about all of that too.
Thank you.
Hi, all of you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing some valuable experiences. My name is Manvi Sharma. I'm pursuing Masters in Business Analytics from College of Business. My question is regarding data analytics. So today, no matter what the airline is, maybe it is a ultra low cost carrier, full cost carrier, or any sort of airline, everyone is using data these days. So how data is, so how much data is important in these days to leverage insightful decisions in terms of planning, pricing, or operations?
I can take that one. Data is my life. I can say it that way. And yet I run a large portion of operations. And what I mean by this is, and I'm sure the same is true for all my peers, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. As simple as that. And so in every single one of the organizations I've led, I made sure that every single organization be equipped with the ability to manage very cleanly and very clearly every single side of the business. There is one person in this room that has been in my organization. Jackson interned with us and helped us build a completely new wheels, tires, and brakes program for United. And then not only interned with us, but landed the full-time position and starts with us in July. If he'd not demonstrated his data skills while he interned with us, he wouldn't be here. And so it's at all levels of the organizations to make sure that at the end of the day, we know exactly how the business operates. That's one thing, but most importantly, so that you can know where your pain points are and then put strategies in place to address them. If these are long-term structural issues that you have that you need to solve, or if you have momentary pain points, how do you actually go in solving them? And so data is the day-to-day rhythm of our operations.
Yeah, I would say that maybe not just UPS, but I would say other companies, we're very data rich, but maybe knowledge poor. We have a lot of data. What we do with it is key to our success. We also say, and you've heard this before too, right? A little bit of knowledge can be dangerous. It's how do you interpret that data to make a good business decision is what makes you successful or not. I think that's actually where AI is going to be really impactful, to be able to help us interpret that and make sense of large amounts of data more quickly to make a more informed decision.
Thank you so much.
If I could just add, I encourage who's and knows the other. I would encourage all the operators involved with your partners and because we really partners just for the rest of the year. There were two ahead with the data. Those of us on to understand what the problems are and work with the team are able to come back and really develop much more useful solutions.
Thank you, John.
Okay, my name is Chilong Guo, and I have the one question about the AI for the airlines. And my question is, does any airlines use the AI for the recruit employees? I just want to share some experience about me. And I think right now I applied some internship and applied many website. Some website use maybe 7 steps or more fill the forms. And some website, they use the AI to screen the candidates. But one airlines, I think that is a FedEx. They have the dialogue, and that is use AI. Hello, how are you? And which position you are looking for? And I said internship finance, and it's very efficient. Just transfer the next step, just two steps. Very efficient, and you feel the respect and the humanity. And I think if like this website, they have the 1,000 candidate for one job, but maybe other airlines, they screened something just 100 for one job. So compared to both sides, I think how to use the AI for this. Everyone said that the employee is the most important value asset for airlines, but how to improve this? Thank you.
So maybe I can address AI in the limited ways that I know we use of. So I've chatted about United GPT a little bit earlier. I've chatted how we've developed first with employees and now with AI, every flight has a story. I'll tell you what I'm doing in the operations to use AI. Started last year, we've developed in partnership with our analytics and innovation teams, machine learning vision coupled with AI that enables us to recognize a part in the operation provided back from our mechanics that's been utilized, so that then we can send it to vendors for repair and overhaul. And so if the technician was doing its role the proper way, the technician would tag the part, and then we know exactly what the part is. Well, compliance sometimes means that folks forget to tag the part, but at the same time, I don't want to discard of an asset. And if I don't want to discard of an asset, I need to have a mechanism that enables me to recognize exactly what that part is, to be able to launch this. And so we've developed a machine learning vision coupled with AI to do just that. And a second set that we are currently investigating is simply to do dangerous goods verification, second set of eye verifications, assisted with AI, so that we can know right away in a much faster way when we ship dangerous goods whether the packaging is properly done, whether the markings are properly positioned on the box, to keep the operation safer. And so these are simple ways where we use AI in the operations, or intend to use AI for the second one in the operations, in a way that makes us more efficient. We're talking about efficiencies a little bit earlier at the core, and that's really what it is for us, making the operation more efficient and recovering our assets better, which is also an efficient way of using AI.
I just want to make a quick, if I understood you correctly, was that you were applying to companies and they were using AI to pass you through and put you through the system. I'll just make a comment relative to Delta, just Delta, because that's who I'm speaking on behalf of. AI is not used when you apply for a job at Delta. And I will tell you, because I post jobs that I hire for on a regular basis. I get a rundown, once we close the listing, I get a rundown of every single individual that applied, be it internal or external. Not all jobs are external, and that's one thing that I wanted to mention that Bill mentioned earlier, was that I think hiring from within an organization, I think there's a drive to do that as much as possible, because you're investing in the company and we're invested in you, and we want to see that happen as much as we can. But when there is a posting that's external, nobody is eliminated in any capacity by AI. You take that to the bank. I get the entire listing of every single individual externally who applied for the job. Now, what happens at Delta is you have this group called talent acquisition. They would say, well, we gave you a subset of the group because these people met the criteria. I said, no, give me the list, because I want to see the whole list. So I'm just letting you know, and I can only speak for Delta, that that's not done, 100%. I think it's interesting that if that's happening, I think that's a dynamic we're going to have to take a look at as an industry. And I think your comments about the humanity of that, I think, has a point. I think the intentions are probably valid, but I'm not saying the execution is where it needs to be. But again, on behalf of Delta, we do not do that.
I will tell you also are not subject to one side of the story. You should also leverage the other side. The other side is you. You can use AI to retailor your resume for each and every single role it is you want to apply to. In fact, there are some services out there that will, quote unquote, use AI to fill the application for you. I'm not sure I'd want to do that, but such services exist. Look them up on the web. And so said differently, if one party uses it, the other can too.
All right, we're down to our last question. Thank you, panel. We're going to go in this. I had one here too. All right, let me get this one then. We have two questions. Sorry, you can't leave yet.
Good afternoon. I'm Drew, and I want to build upon the question asked by Alisher. You mentioned new routes and code sharing as well. When it comes to your own fleet, how do you decide when to deploy your own airplanes versus those delegated to your regional partners?
So it's all about gauge management, right? And so if you look at gauge management, if you think about the world of a network, the next incremental route, unless you're a bad planner, is generally worse than the previous route you've created, and so on and so forth. And so it's marginal opportunities every time. And so when you look at things, you look at things both on a fully allocated P&L basis. Think back to that network contribution I was talking about earlier. But once you do capacity tweaks, or if you want to know whether your capacity is the right capacity, you also look at what we call marginal costing. And marginal costing is what is the marginal cost of X seats, that difference in capacity, right, between two tails for that market versus the total capacity of those airplanes. And so we very actively look at that to make sure that the right capacity is deployed on markets. And when you look at marginal capacity, it's both the marginal costing, but also the marginal revenue that you can get or that you would spill. And so we actively look at this to make cost trade-offs, to make P&L trade-offs at the end of the day, and net contribution trade-offs onto markets to know exactly what type of airplanes to leverage on what type of market. And so now we run the entire cost gamut, right? Because you run it from the smallest airplane in the fleet all the way to the largest airplane in the fleets. And so when you do that at some point, you go into the express world. And so it's not that we choose to go mainline or express, but it's really a gauge play up until that market graduates into the mainline space. And I'm sure the same is true on the cargo space.
It is. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. I mean, if you have an airplane, like India is an emerging market for us now. We know that we could, we believe we could fill up airplanes with critical health care in India if we were able to provide more capacity. But there's a risk of that expense of putting that asset in there without the immediate return of filling up a 747-8. So what we do is we work with partner airlines to use belly space to grow to a point similar to what you were talking about, to where we get to a point to where we can upsize to our own 767 brown tail and then eventually to a 747-8. But it's about growing into that market before we allocate the full expense of putting a big jet in there.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia Flieger. I'm currently a senior in supply chain. You guys talked a lot about being open to moving laterally before moving up. I know that I'm personally a really competitive person, so whatever field or role I get put in, I want to be the absolute best person. I think one of my fears is being put into a role such as I'm supply chain. If I got put into logistics somehow and I am a total rock star in that role, that the company wouldn't want me to leave that position. And then it leaves me the option of maybe I need to look elsewhere at another company, and then what if they say, well, we want somebody with actual supply chain management experience, not with logistics?
It's a very good question. And I have one word to say for everybody's benefit, but yours directly. Patience. When you graduate from this institution, you will have the experience, you have the knowledge and the intelligence of a recent graduate. I understand exactly what you're saying. I will tell you, if you work for somebody who keeps you in a job because you're really good at it and doesn't allow you advancement, you have a major leadership problem. Because a true leader will take somebody and say, they will make you, the leader, look good if they get promoted. Has it happened to everybody on this panel where they've been kept in a role because we were good at it? You bet. And did we move on? You bet. Guaranteed. It's a good question. So my advice to you is this. If you want to be in supply chain and somebody's giving you a job in logistics, go team. Because that knowledge that you're going to gain in logistics will be invaluable for when you do get the supply chain job. Your job is to manage your career and make sure your leadership is aware that you want to move on onwards and upwards. Be cautious of being overly ambitious, because we don't want anybody to be disappointed saying, well, I wanted that, but I'll take that. Okay, I'll do it. It's not what's going on here. It may take several steps to get where you want to be, But in your direct example, logistics is awesome. It might not be sexy the whole time, but you're going to learn. And that expertise is invaluable, and you will use it every day when you do get into supply chain.
All right, she lied. There was one more question. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joseph. I'm a senior in aeronautics. I came here a bit late, so I don't know if this question was covered already, but when I did come here, you on the far left, I forgot your name, you were talking about the usage of AI, how you're using it to write your papers and stuff for certain people. Now, it caused me to think about will AI affect the pay scale of not only you guys, but people freshly entering the industry? I mean, leadership's going to see AI makes things easier, people are doing less work. Wouldn't it be smarter for them just to slash pays in half or to offer lower entry wages for people?
Yeah, I don't use it to write any paper like that. When somebody does that, it's so obvious. Like, I see people even in WhatsApp groups using AI to respond back to my messages, and it just couldn't be any less like just empty, right? But, know how to use it. And I think that's what I was saying earlier. Like, it's not just like, oh, write a paper for me. Yeah, it will write the paper. But because everybody else is using ChatGPT, they will know that this is not you. There's nothing personal about this. ChatGPT has specific ways in writing stuff. And I have a bachelor in English, and I can tell that that person did not write this essay. And it's like a 0. But it's different when you use it to do work. Like, I do human factors, right? Sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm thinking for like 3 days, what could be this question, when I can use my Boeing AI to just help me start an idea. Because when they gave me like that first sentence, I went on a roll. And I can write like 30 different other questions for like situational awareness and human factors or something like that. Maybe at that moment, I don't have to spend, 5 days looking up an article when AI already looked it up for me right away, and I was able to immediately read it and immediately give out those answers instead of, my coworkers waiting, 5 days for me to do a whole flight testing, human factors thing. They just waited 1 day because I was able to use all that AI to my advantage. So.
And to be candid, you won't get a pay cut because let's be real. If you are efficient using AI, your boss will very quickly realize that you have more bandwidth. More bandwidth means you can do more and produce more. And so the temporary effect of getting quote-unquote more work will be very ever so momentary, and your plate will be back to being really full really quickly. And so then you'll have to find the next thing, the replacement of AI, that will make you even more efficient than you are with AI. And so and so at the end of the day, AI is here to assist you in your role. AI is not here to do your role. And as you've alluded to, AI hallucinates. You have to check AI. It's never going to come and be done. You're going to have to redo it, modify it, tweak it, actually in some spaces not rely on it to actually get to the right answer.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to conclude by saying thank you to our audience, staff, faculty, students for being here, asking amazing questions. More importantly, thank you to all of our panelists. I can say on behalf of everyone, we are extremely appreciative of your time and your insight. So if we could get one more final applause for our panelists. Thank you.